So Jack, what year was you born, and can you remember anything of the war?
I was born in 1927, 37, sorry, 37. And I was 2 when the war started. Some of the things I remember are very early. I remember living in Longsight when it first started, and then my dad joined the army, my brother joined the navy, and that left me and my sister and my mum. So we decided to move in with my grandmother because she was on her own, and obviously she would get a bit frightened, so we moved in down to Openshaw. In Openshaw, we had the Anderson shelters in the backyard, and outside the backyard we had a big concrete shelter which was a communion shelter, but obviously all the dogs and cats used it, you know, and it was so it was up to the women of the area to clean that out 2 or 3 times a week. If it was a bad air raid, we'd just go in the Anderson or whatever, but if it sounded heavy, you know, coming over to Trafford Park or the docks or wherever, we would go in the big shelter. But there was nothing there, only seats round the sides, so you could only get so many in. One of the memories I remember was, as a kid, was that the lady next door worked on the railways, and to work on the railways during the war, you had to be starting around about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I can always remember walking down the yard every morning in a clogs. And you could hear the click, clock, click, clock, click, every morning that happened. And I remember, like Margaret said, or somebody said, that the Home Guard used to practice on a Sunday, and they'd be prodding backyard doors and getting in, see if there was anybody in the toilets, you know, making a general nuisance of themselves, you know. Remember that. And I also remember, as I was getting towards the middle of the war, or towards the near end, I remember seeing the flying bombs coming over. And they used to come over and they'd use hold your breath, and if the engine carried on over you, you was fine. But if the engine stopped before it got to you, you was a little bit shaky because it, you know, it was on its way. And over the period of the war, I saw about 4 of them, you know, and I was only a kid, but they didn't mean anything. You know, nothing was real. It was, you know, like Margaret said, it was natural. It was natural, you know. I was never frightened because I knew that my mum would protect me, and you know, so I was never really frightened. But we did have bad air raids at Trafford Park and Liverpool, places like that, and even the middle of Manchester got a right battering. I remember the end of the war. When it was announced that we all had a big party, we had a bonfire in the back, and we had a big party and we had a big parade down Ashton Hall Road to Hardwick Green. Everybody was banging on the lids on the tin lids, you know, both dustbin lids, all the lot. It was great. And then, as I say, rationing was when it's highest. One of my treats was going to the pictures every week. We always went to the pictures, but when you saw the news, it was mainly what was happening over Germany. They never really shown you what was happening over in the UK. It was propaganda, really. They didn't want to frighten you, whatever. And about the rationing, the sweet shop next door to the cinema, she used to take points in advance, so you'd be going in July and you'd be eating November's soffies. She would take them in advance. And we had a friend of my dad's who worked at the Co-op, and like Kathy, there was always a little bit of under the table stuff, you know, a bit of extra butter or a few eggs or whatever. And my mum used to say to me, when you go, if Georgie's not serving, you don't go in. You wait until he comes off his break and he'll serve you. And he did that, he did. It gives you a little bit of extra, you know, which I know people say, oh, black market, but you had to survive. You know, ration was okay to a certain point, like clothes wasn't that important, things like that, but food was important, you know, you had to have your food. And we managed through the war, and we come out of it at the other end okay. And the first thing I remember after the war, in the food line, was having a banana. I'd never seen a banana. Never seen a banana. Yeah, and the other thing that I remember was my mum was an avid smoker, and she used to send me to the corner shop for 5 woodbines. Well, if you got 5 woodbines, you know, you was in there, you know. But they always come from under the counter, you know, 5 woodbines, in a paper packet, not in like the cardboard. And then when my brother used to come home on leave from the Navy, he used to bring boxes, like round boxes of cigarettes, always senior service, because they got an issue. The sailors got an issue. And there'd be about 20 or 30 cigarettes. And it was like a gold mine, you know. That'd last her for about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, you know. It was great. I remember my dad coming home, and he always used to bring his rifle with him.
Yeah,
So it wasn't loaded, there was nothing in that. And I used to mind it for him. When he went for a pint, I used to mind his rifle. And that was my job.
Yeah.
What age were you then, Jack? When you minded the rifle?
I'd be about, I was 2 when it was, if this was getting near the end now, I'd be about...
It was 7 or 8.
Yeah, 6 or 7, yeah, 6 or 7. Yeah, and he used to let me mind his rifle. I used to stand there as a sentry on guard, you know. That's great.
Amazing.
But the later, that was about all I remember of the war, you know. Aeroplanes and bombing and things like that. Things that kids remember, you know.
Yeah.
It was good. Halfway through the war, I was taken to Scotland by my grandparents, and we stayed at Rothsay, which was a port, and in the harbour they had the mothership, and every morning the submarines used to go out and return at night to be refuelled, and this was a regular thing. And the main thing was that there was a lot of people there at night to see them come home, to make sure that they all came home.
Yeah.
And while I was there, obviously it's very lucky because we didn't see any that didn't come home. So as a kid again, it didn't make an impact as that anything was wrong. It was just normal life, and it was normal life to the people who lived there. And as I say, it was great. And one thing I do remember is that in the middle of what we call the prom, they had a big marble draft board, and it must have been about 5 foot by 5 foot, marked off in the normal chessboard squares, and the pieces were like that. They were about, I don't know, about 8 inches across, 9 inches across, with a hook on. And the old lads used to sit round this board, and they used to have a pole with a hook on, and they used to play drafts. Sat down on a bench, they were all playing drafts there, and it was what a sight that was. They wasn't bothered. They wasn't bothered about the war. Who won the drafts?